Hello, thank you, and good morning. I actually don't have that accent, but I would think it would be really cool to give a TED Talk in that accent. Just sounds better. But I am up here giving a TED Talk, which tells you that I'm advanced. I'm very advanced. So advanced, in fact, that I had my midlife crisis at age 29. Oh, yes. I used to be a bond trader on Wall Street. I used to trade bonds for Morgan Stanley, Latin American bonds and currencies. Then at age 29, I said, well, it took me a little bit longer, but for the sake of the story, I'll tell you it took me so around age 29, I said, this doesn't make any sense. I can't imagine myself being 70 years old, looking back at my one shot at life and saying, I bought and sold bonds. So I thought, okay, who's my role model? Well, my role model was always my in Vermont. Great, Dr. Richard Narkowitz, small-town pediatrician, awesome guy. I said, well, I want to be like that guy when I grow up. So I went back to school. Had to go back and do all my pre-med work, then go to med school, go to psychiatry residency, and then get a child psychiatry fellowship. Now, on the way, I discovered I had generalized anxiety. And at first, like a lot of people said, well, I don't need any of that. I don't need any help or medication or anything like that. I'll be fine. Of course, after not sleeping for about a month, I said, I might need a little help. And so I reached out to a psychiatrist for a little bit of help. And he ended up helping me a lot with some therapy, medication, paroxetine, and I still take it. That's actually Paxil. I don't get paid by Paxil, but I'm just letting you know what paroxetine means. The anxiety was successfully treated, but it took me sort of an extra year to get through my pre-med work because the transition from being a bond trader to physician was a little bit difficult, I found. So anyway, went through the process, my midlife crisis, figuring out I had anxiety disorder. And then at some point when I graduated medical school in 2008, I said, well, there comes that point where I got to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to be that pediatrician? Am I going to be a neurologist? Am I going to be, God forbid, a psychiatrist? Well, I had spent some time I went to med school at Yale, and they have the Yale Child Study Center, which is a really great place for studying child psychiatry, and I met some mentors there. Were very inspiring, but I kept thinking, no, I should be a neurologist, because being a psychiatrist, is that being a real doctor? I don't know, okay, what will people say? I mean, I've made this effort to become a doctor. Let's just be a real doctor. But I kept thinking, when I wake up in the morning, what do I want to do? Well, I want to spend time with these kids and families, interacting in the way that some of my mentors were doing. I said, forget it, I'm going to be a psychiatrist. Fine. So I go do my training. I go to residency. I get my fellowship in child psychiatry. And then April of 2013, I get an email. I was about to take a job in the wake of Newtown you'll remember December of 2012, the tragedy at Newtown. In the wake of that, a few months later, I was going to take a job nearby as a child psychiatrist, but I got this email about something in Montana. And I'm like, I've never been to Montana. I talked to my wife, I said, Ella, should I open this email? I said, yeah, open it, check it out, see what happens. Checked out the email, said, okay, Montana looking for a child psychiatrist. I said, all right, should I call? She said, yeah, give him a call. So I called. Told me a little bit about what's going on. I did a phone interview, and I said, well, let's just go over it. It'll be a free trip to Montana. Check it out. Never been there. So come here and land in Billings. And I was expecting moose and fish and deer and everything. That didn't happen. But I eventually found those animals, spent some time at Billings Clinic, had some great interviews, and decided to come here. I thought it would be a great place for us and our two girls. So anyway, so we arrived here August of 2013, and so this is my first job at age 44 as a doctor. Not a real doctor, not sure yet. So anyway, so I start my work August 2013 here. What do I find? Well, I find that Montana is at the epicenter of a mental health crisis. We're at the epicenter of a mental health crisis. Number one in suicide rates in the United States. Number one in suicide rates in the United States. Add to that, we're number 3 in terms of per capita population for veterans. Number 5 in terms of per capita population of Native Americans. Billings Public Schools, in the last Youth Risk and Behavioral Survey, showed that in the last 12 months, 1 in 7 high schoolers attempted suicide in Billings, Montana. 1 in 7. How many is that in a classroom? Mind you, we have a crisis nationally. Mental illness is the number 1 cause for physical and medical disability. Number 1, mental illness. It's not cancer, it's not heart disease. It's not diabetes, it's mental illness. The number 2 selling drug in the United States is aripiprazole, also known as Abilify, an antipsychotic. Number 2. So I'm at the epicenter of this crisis. I work about 3 or 4 blocks down from here. Again, like I said, I'm trained as a child and adolescent psychiatrist. In the mornings, I spend time on the inpatient unit. Here at Billings Clinic, we have between 10 and 20 beds, depending on our need, to be able to take care of some kids who come into the hospital. And the kids who come into the emergency room are people, well, in general, when you hospitalize someone for psychiatric reasons, they're because they're at very high risk of imminent suicide, hurting others, severely disorganized, psychotic, and they can't be cared for in the community setting. So we have 10 to 20 youth beds. We have 20 to 30 adult beds. Overall, we have 44 beds. So in the mornings, I spend in the youth unit, taking care of kids who come in through the emergency room. In the afternoons, I spend time in the clinic seeing kids on an outpatient basis. So they might be referred to me from from pediatricians, other clinicians. They might have been in the hospital. Over the last month, so I was looking at this on just outside, because I wanted to look at what the statistics were. So in the last 30 days here in Billings, we've admitted almost 180 adults into the psychiatric unit, and almost 80, forgive me, I lied. It's over almost 160 adults and almost 80 kids in the psychiatric unit. That doesn't count all the people that came to the emergency room, and we said, yeah, they're risky, but not risky enough. But part of that is because we don't have enough beds. So what happens? Well, when youth come into the hospital, a lot of times, as you can imagine, these are the kids, a lot of the kids who have been physically abused, sexually abused, neglected, okay? There's also the kids who, for some reason, genetically predisposed, more vulnerable to mental illness, but a lot of these kids are among the most vulnerable and have seen things that hopefully we'll never have to see. And that was actually bad. I shouldn't have assumed nobody here has seen that, so I'm sorry for that. So kids come into the youth unit, and I discovered, because Montana is so, because it's not very dense in terms of population, the geographies are so wide. I mean, I have some families come to me, they drive 6 hours for a psychiatric evaluation. I'm good, but I'm not that good. 6 hours? They come to me for a psychiatric evaluation. So anyway, so we're on the youth unit, and what happens is, because of our geography, a lot of communities don't have the services they need, so they have to sort of be in the hospital because in the community there's nothing. So sometimes these kids get sent to a residential treatment facility. They get sent away from the families, away from their communities, and then a lot of these kids end up on lots of medications. And it's sad, and it feels hopeless. So I'm playing defense all day long. I have a team. I have mental health workers, nurses who work with me. And there are days when it feels pretty difficult, very difficult. So one day, one of these kids came in. We'll call him Jim. So Jim came in. He's 17 years old. He just came from a psychiatric residential treatment facility for kids, for youth. And what happens here at the Billings Clinic, at the hospital, we get all the kids that are so difficult to treat, so treatment refractory, that they end up in the emergency room because other people don't know what to do. We don't always know what to do, but they certainly know what to do, but we got to deal with it, right? So Jim comes here. He comes to the Billings Clinic. He's brought here from another psychiatric residential treatment facility because he was too acute. He was trying to cut himself all the time. He wouldn't stop. He would use anything. He'd pick up like a little piece of staple. He'd try cutting himself. He'd pick up a paper clip. He went so far as to start picking paint off the walls, taking the little sharp chips of the paint and start cutting himself, okay? They couldn't stop him. They couldn't stop him. He wouldn't stop. He's been in residential treatment facilities for at least a year, suicidal, depressed. They didn't know what to do with him. So they brought him over, and because, and I'm a real doctor because I can prescribe things, so he came in on a bunch of medications. I changed a few things, and there's one medication that I read somewhere could sometimes be helpful in people who cut. Why? Because when you cut, you actually release these natural endorphins. And so it creates this cycle of reward, and so if I can give him this medication that breaks that cycle, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to be great, and I'm going to feel good, and I'm going to send him back, and I'm going to see, that's how you take care of this. So I prescribed him this medication, and I went back to the residential treatment facility, went home, said, Ella, I'm good. Went to Yale. it's great. So I said, see, okay, I can make a difference here and there. Well, 2 days later, he's in the emergency room again. He's cutting more hopeless, more desperate, and gets admitted again. All right, maybe I'm not that good. So this picture right here is to show you a little bit what our inpatient unit looks like. It's not beautiful, but it's designed for safety, right? So there's nothing here, right? So a lot of the outlets, the door handles, all these things are designed for safety, not beauty, not aesthetics. And it's designed to be as little stimulating as possible so we can keep people calm when and if necessary. Anyway, so he was in a room like this. Came in and talked to him. I'm sorry, man. I was hoping that medication would hurt. What's going on? Unbelievably hopeless, unbelievably depressed, no energy. On top of this, can't sleep. And I'd walk in one day to talk to him, and he says, just let me lie here and die. I'm done. And he goes, you know what? And the other thing, I'm not going to take medications anymore. I'm done. It's making me feel numb. So what do I do? Not taking medications. The residential treatment facility certainly won't take him back. Now I got to do something. So I remembered a colleague of mine had sent me a paper about a year and a half ago by a guy named Dr. Salem from Medical University of South Carolina, and they had done this thing called triple chronotherapy. So triple chronotherapy, it was a small study, and in 10 people with treatment refractory, which means very, very, very difficult depression to treat, very difficult to treat depression, either bipolar or unipolar depression, they did this intervention, which was called triple chronotherapy, and they did a combination of sleep deprivation, light therapy in the morning, and they shifted bedtimes over the course of 4 days and lifted people out of depression in 4 days. Really? So I looked at this, I read this paper, it was pretty amazing. I go, that can't be true, but that's pretty cool. Put it aside. And by the way, he told me that he was at an Ivy League institution that'll remain unnamed, and he presented this and said, hey, we should check this out and do this. They said, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. We got the whole FDA, the medication, the psychopharmacology, blah, 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 blah. We don't do that. Okay. Anyway, so I talked to Jim. I go, Jim, you don't want to take medication. You're hopeless. You're not sleeping. You're depressed. You want to kill yourself. And he kept trying to hurt himself, by the way. He had cuts everywhere. I said, I have a colleague who gave me this paper. It's called triple chronotherapy. It's no medication. It's light, sleep deprivation, and I'm shifting your bedtime. You want to give it a shot? He goes, I want to get better. I'll do anything, but I'm not doing medication. It's made me feel numb, and it's giving me side effects, and I don't like it. So I go, all right, well, what do you want to do? And so he said, first, just get me out of this dress. What am I talking about? Well, let me go back to this dress here. So he was cutting himself so much, we put him in a safety smock. It's one of these things that looks like these gowns that you wear when you're getting x-rays. It's a safety smock, nothing underneath, because we didn't want him to hide anything that he could use to cut himself. So he says, get me out of this dress. Just get me out of this dress. I said, fine. You're going to stop cutting? He goes, I think I can. I said, all right, we're going to start doing this thing today. But I'm like, wait, I got to talk to my team. So I go talk to the nurses. I go, here's a paper. I want to tell you about this thing called triple chronotherapy. So I tell them all about it. And they light up. They're like, wow, we might actually help a kid and without just adding medication. Like, we're in. They started reading the paper, started putting together protocols for the day, and then we brought in the mental health workers, because the mental health workers and the nurses are the front line. They're the one doing all the work. I'm up here to give them the talk, but they're the one doing all the work. So they're on board. So I'm like, you with me? They're like, yeah, we're with you. So I talked to Jim. All right, I got the nurses, mental health workers. You with me, Jim? Yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's do it. So this is what it looks like. So again, first day. So let's say Jim that morning, for whatever sleep he did get, he gets out of bed at 8 o'clock. And so we keep him awake for about 36 hours the next day. And by the way, that next morning we give him light therapy for half an hour as part of the protocol. He then goes to sleep at 6 p.m. that night. And we do this for about 3 days, and we shift bedtimes every day, and we give light therapy in the morning, every morning. Oh yeah, but I got to get a light box. Amazon, no, it's going to take too long. I want it now. Where do I go? Then one of the mental health workers says, dude, Bed Bath & Beyond. To Bed Bath & Beyond. All right, so here we go. So I get in the car, I get my credit card, I got to go drive to Bed Bath & Beyond. I walk in, I'm like, I need a light box, and it needs, let me look at the paper. 10,000 lux is the strength of light that I need. So I go in, Get the light box, drive back, we start the thing, and what was incredible about Jim was his motivation to want to stay awake. He wanted it so bad, he wanted this to work so bad that he stayed awake, and the nurses and the mental health workers were amazing in keeping him awake. They would play basketball with him. There's a gym. They'd play basketball with him in the gym during the night. They would play cards with him. They kept him up. He had the light therapy. It was dramatic. He went from, we were using scales to measure the level of depression on day 0, let's call it. Very, very high intensity clinical depression. By the last day of the treatment, didn't meet criteria for depression. I asked, how strong are your urges to cut on day 0? 0 to 10, where is it? It was a 9 or 10 out of 10. And he goes, I need to cut. I feel like I need to cut now. The last day of the treatment, 0. I go, this is ridiculous. This can't be. And by the way, the paper showed that this has only been done in adults. So we're kind of winging it here with doing it in kids. But it started to work. It actually worked. And so now I'm left with, okay, what do I do? The residential treatment facility won't take him back. Where do you live? Well, I was living with my grandfather. Send him back to his grandfather with very few community resources around, to a kid who was cutting like crazy for about 4 days ago. I guess. So I said, all right, well, let's do that, but I'm going to start you on a low-dose medication. I'm not going to get into it now, but I'm going to start you on a low-dose medication just in case. I think it was more to treat my anxiety than his anxiety, but I said, let's do it. So we did it. He discharged. A month later, comes to see me in my office. He's doing amazing. He looks great. He's still smiling. He's sleeping. He had never slept so well, he said, after all this. He hadn't felt so good in years, he said. It was really remarkable. In preparation for this talk, I said, oh, that'd be a really cool story to tell, but how's he doing now? So last week I called the family. I said, because he lives in another state. He lives in one of the Dakotas, I believe. So it was hard for him to keep coming back to see me. But, I would think about him. I called him last week, and I got to talk to one of his family members, and they said he's doing great. He's about to get married. He's finishing high school and is planning to go to college. Had one meltdown somewhere in there, but is still doing really, really well. Maybe I'm a real doctor. Maybe I'm a real doctor. This is amazing, and I don't need a prescription pad to be a real doctor. I need a team. I have the nurses. Oh, by the way, if whoever is here or ever watches this, listen to your nurses and work with your nurses, because we don't know everything, and we need them. And the mental health workers also, unbelievable job. So these guys did such a great job. They ended up putting these protocols together, so we ended up doing this in about 4 or 5 other, we did this in about 6 other youth. 4 out of those 6 did very, very well. 2 just didn't respond, and that's not unexpected in a treatment like this. So we're at the epicenter of a mental health crisis here in Montana. And I guess one of my hopes is that we can sort of become the heart of a movement to turn this thing around. I think we have incredible opportunities. We have incredible tools in our toolbox already. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to be open to looking at what's already available, making good use of it, engaging our teams, and not hope there's going to be a magic bullet, a magic pill out there somewhere. It's not going to happen. We've been looking for a long, ain't going to happen. But there's a lot of good research and a lot of good tools out there already that we need to start using and working together on our clinical teams to make good use of these things. So my fantasy is to train real doctors here in Montana, to train and retain psychiatrists here in Montana, psychiatrists who have the ability to think outside the box, who have the ability to focus on the needs of Montana, thinking about all the populations that I mentioned earlier, to be able to think about systems, family systems, school systems, community systems, but be able to think outside the box, be real doctors, and go beyond the prescription pad. And I think if we're able to think that way and do it, I think we'll be able to turn this trend around. Thanks very much.